The mop slid across the marble in slow arcs, catching the chandelier light in broken shapes. Bleach clung to the back of my throat. Sharp, clinical. Nothing like the imported Italian cleanser we used to use when I was the one approving invoices here. The bucket wheels wobbled when I dragged them behind me, a stuttering sound that echoed through the lobby like I didn't belong. I kept my eyes on the floor. It was easier that way. Easier not to see the glass elevator, the gold-trimmed directories, the suits that pretended the janitors were invisible. You miss a spot. The voice cut from behind me, nasal and bored. I didn't look up. My hands tightened around the mop handle. My palms were raw. $11 an hour doesn't include gloves. Kenneth, Jesus. Try to look alive. Another voice snapped. This one I recognized, Michael, the new facility manager. 28, gel hair, graduate degree. This building was a playground for men like him, and a punishment for men like me. I swallowed the burn in my throat. I'll redo it, sir. A few bankers walked by, their polished shoes tapping out judgment on the marble. One of them laughed under his breath. They'll let anyone in here these days. My grip trembled, but I stayed silent. Silence was the only way to keep the job. Then the elevator dinged, a clean, melodic sound that didn't match the filth inside my chest. People spilled out in designer coats and winter perfume. I didn't look until I heard a voice I knew too well. Oh my God, is that Ken? I froze. My ex-wife Lisa stood there in a camel coat, diamonds on her fingers. Beside her, our son David, dressed in a tailored suit I'd once dreamed of buying for him after his internships. His jaw clenched the second he saw me. Mom, don't stare, he muttered. Lisa's smile was soft, rehearsed, condescending. I just didn't realize things got this bad. Something inside me collapsed, but I kept pushing the mop, each stroke heavier than the last. Then a stranger stepped forward from behind them, tall, salt and pepper beard, dark overcoat. He looked straight at me, not through me. His brows drew together, recognition sparking. Excuse me, he said slowly. Are you Kenneth? I lifted my head for the first time, not in shame, but in shock, because no one had said my name with that kind of weight in years. My name is Kenneth Allen Whitford, and there was a time when people said it with respect, not hesitation, not pity, not confusion. Whitford used to mean something in this building. For 18 years, I was a senior purchasing director on the 14th floor, the one who negotiated international contracts, the one who signed off on shipments, the one who knew every vendor by name. I wore tailored shirts then. Cufflinks my wife gave me our 10th anniversary. Leather shoes that never touched bleach water. I used to smell like cedar cologne and elevator perfume, not ammonia, and cheap industrial soap. Back then, I had a corner office with glass walls and a walnut desk. I had a family who sat front row at company holiday dinners. Lisa on my right, our son David on my left, all of us polished, smiling for photos while employees whispered how lucky we were. I believed them. I believed everything would stay the same. It's strange how decline doesn't hit like a car crash. It creeps. First a restructuring rumor, then a leadership reshuffle, then a new CFO who wanted fresh blood. I trained young hires, the very ones who later took over my accounts. I tried to stay humble, tried to be a team player, tried to prove I wasn't too old, too stuck, too expensive. Then came the day HR called me into a glass room with soft chairs and a box of tissues placed like a threat. Severance package grateful for your long service, economic pressure. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. 20 years of loyalty on a clipboard. Lisa said we would get through it. She held my hand on the drive home, her thumb rubbing mine like she wanted to believe her own words. But fear changes people. 3 months later came the first comment. You're not trying hard enough. Then everyone gets laid off. Why are you taking it so hard? Then silence. Long, cold, marriage-killing silence. Savings melted. Interviews went nowhere. 53 is young in life, but ancient in corporate spreadsheets. Calls stopped. Friends disappeared. David stopped asking about my job and started avoiding my eyes. One Sunday morning, Lisa stood in the kitchen, holding her phone like a shield. I can't live like this anymore, Ken. I need stability. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just detached. A lawyer served papers 3 weeks later. I didn't contest anything. Not the house, not the accounts, not even the car. I told myself it was dignity. Maybe it was just exhaustion. I moved into a single-room apartment with walls thin enough to hear neighbors argue through. The first night there, I unpacked a box and found the cufflinks. I remember holding them, cold and small and useless, wondering how a life with so much could shrink into so little. Work was work. Warehouse shifts, delivery gigs, repair temp job, until a janitorial contractor called. $11 an hour. I told myself it was temporary. 2 years later, I was still polishing floors in the same corporate building where I used to sign international contracts. No one recognized me. Or maybe they did and chose not to. And yet, even after everything, I still love them. I still check David's LinkedIn in secret. Still watch Lisa show off her new home in Christmas photos posted by mutual friends. Hurt doesn't erase love. Sometimes it protects it, twists it, keeps it breathing even when it shouldn't. I kept my head down. I stayed silent. I accepted the humiliation because I had nothing left to fight with. Until today, until that man stepped forward in the lobby and said my name like it mattered. Something shifted inside me the second he spoke it. Not hope, not fear. A warning that everything buried was about to surface. The man didn't look away when I stared back at him. Everyone else did. Lisa, David, the bankers, the young executives pretending they didn't notice the janitor who used to outrank them. But this stranger's eyes held mine like he was trying to confirm a memory. He stepped closer, slow and cautious, like he didn't want to spook me. Kenneth Allen Whitford? My breath caught. No one had used my full name since the HR exit interview. I forced myself to stand straighter. Yes, that's me. A flicker of relief crossed his face, like he'd found something valuable that had been missing. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed manila envelope, thick enough to warp at the edges. My pulse hammered. "I've been looking for you," he said. Lisa bristled. "Why?" "He's busy," she snapped, gesturing to the mop in my hands as if it proved something. The man ignored her. He extended the envelope toward me with both hands, respectful, ceremonial, almost. Something in my bones knew this wasn't junk mail or a scam. It felt heavy, final. I didn't move to take it. "Who sent you?" I asked. He glanced around the lobby, suddenly aware of the eyes on us. "Not here. This isn't the place." That sentence sliced through me, because this building used to be my place. Michael, the young facility manager, marched over with manufacturer authority. "Sir, whatever this is, you can take it outside. My staff needs to stay on task." My staff. Just 2 words, but they burned. The man, calm, composed, pulled a wallet from his coat and flashed a single card. I didn't see the details, just a reaction. Michael's face blanched, and he backed away without another word. David watched all of it, anxiety creeping into his expression. "Mom, what's happening?" Lisa whispered, "I don't know, but we're leaving." And just like that, she turned her back, steering our son toward the elevator like I was a problem she hoped the floor would swallow. The ding of the elevator doors, closing, echoed through the lobby. Then the man placed the envelope into my hands. It was warm from his body heat, and heavier than paper should ever feel. "I promised I'd get this to you," he said quietly. "It took longer than it should have." My throat tightened. Is this someone sick? I didn't know why that was the first question, but it came out like a reflex. He didn't answer directly. "Inside is everything you were never told, and everything you were meant to have." Adrenaline flared through me. Hope and terror twisted together. "Why now?" His jaw clenched. For a moment, emotion cracked through his professional mask. "Because the person who kept this from you can't hide it anymore." Before I could ask who he meant, Michael cleared his throat from across the lobby. A coward's demand for the scene to end. The man pressed the phone number into my palm. "Read it somewhere private. Then call me." Then he walked out the revolving doors and disappeared into the winter air. I stood frozen in the center of the marble floor, mop on one side, heavy envelope on the other. One life fading, one life calling. I didn't know it yet, But that envelope would tear my past open, drag buried truths into the light, and force me to face the people who built their comfort on my silence. And for the first time in years, I was afraid to go home, and more afraid not to. I didn't go back to mopping. I couldn't. The envelope felt like it weighed 10 pounds in my hands, like it contained something living. I clocked out early, ignoring Michael shouting behind me, and stepped outside into the raw winter air. The cold bit hard, but I barely felt it. My heart was punching my ribs from the inside. I sat in my old sedan, the one with a cracked dashboard and a heater that wheezed like it was dying, and laid the envelope across my lap. For a full minute, I just stared at my name written in blue ink across the front. Kenneth A. Whitford, to be delivered by hand only. My fingertips tingled. I tore the seal. Inside wasn't a single document. It was a stack. Legal pages, handwritten letters, photocopies of bank transfers, photographs, and a final sheet with a date circled in red, March 9th, 2023, nearly 2 years earlier. At the top was a letter written in clean, precise handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I failed to reach you myself. But you deserve the truth. Signed, Raymond Charles Whitford. My father. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My father and I hadn't spoken in almost a decade. Not because of anger, but because he remarried late in life and his new wife, Victoria, never liked me. I tried to make peace, but somehow every visit ended with me feeling like a guest in the family I grew up in. I thought Dad was thriving, sailing, traveling, golfing. I never imagined he'd been trying to reach me. I flipped through the pages. They revealed a story I didn't know I was part of. A trust fund my father set aside, under my name, meant to activate on his passing, quarterly deposits into the trust for years, steady payments, a final transfer attempt blocked on the circled date, a notarized amendment to his estate naming me sole beneficiary of a significant property. But the signature line was ripped and photocopies showed sections blacked out, a handwritten message from him. Ken, I know you pride yourself on doing things the hard way, but this isn't charity, it's justice. Call the man who brought this envelope. He knows everything I couldn't say in time. My ears buzz. I rub my eyes, trying to breathe. If this was true, someone had intercepted everything meant for me. Someone who had access. Someone who wanted to keep me in the dark. Someone who benefited from me disappearing. I called the number. The man answered immediately. Kenneth, not a question this time. I want to know everything. He gave me an address, Caldwell and Briggs Law Office, 1 p.m. I drove across town in a daze. Every stoplight felt like a countdown ticking towards something irreversible. The law office sat in an old stone building with green shutters and brass door handles polished to shine. Inside, the air smelled of wood polish and coffee. The man, now properly introduced as Mark Holloway, led me to his office and closed the blinds. Files covered his desk, all with my last name. Mark spoke with deliberate control, like he'd practiced his conversation for months. He explained that my father had been diagnosed with aggressive cancer. He tried repeatedly to contact me, but someone screened the calls and redirected mail. Every attempt to reach me went through the same person, Victoria, my stepmother. It didn't end there. Mark opened a ledger that showed withdrawals from my trust, unauthorized, traced to accounts linked to Victoria and her daughter Samantha. Money meant for me had funded their vacations, real estate, and business ventures. And when my father's health declined, they convinced him that I didn't care, that I was too busy, too successful to visit. They painted me as indifferent, to keep me away from the one person who would have corrected it. I sank back in the chair. My voice cracked. He died thinking I didn't show up for him. Mark shook his head. No, he died fighting to get the truth to you. He slid one more folder toward me, the one he had kept sealed until he could confirm my identity. Inside was a copy of my father's final will, executed in a private session without Victoria present. He left everything to me. The house, the lake property, the business shares, the financial accounts. Even the sailboat he said he would give to whoever kept his memory anchored instead of buried. But the will was never filed. Mark's voice darkened. She suppressed it. And she thinks no one will ever know, because you've been erased. I stared at the documents like they were some alternate version of my life. The one I was meant to have. The one that was stolen without me even knowing. Mark leaned forward, voice low but burning. You've lost everything because someone needed you small. If you want the truth, all of it, there's one more place you have to go. He slid an address across the table. I didn't need to ask whose address it was. My father's house. The house that should have been mine. The house where someone forged a world without me. And I knew then I wasn't just uncovering the truth. I was walking straight into a battlefield built from lies. I parked half a block from my father's house. Not because I was hiding, but because I didn't recognize the place anymore. The lawn used to be wild with clover, because Dad hated cutting down free luck. Now it was manicured to perfection, trimmed into submission. The wind chimes he loved were gone. The porch swing replaced with minimalist furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, not a home. It didn't feel like my father lived here. It felt like he'd been erased. I walked up the driveway, every step tightening something in my chest. I wasn't sure what I would do when the door opened. Shout, cry, collapse. But when Victoria answered the door, all of that evaporated into one cold, sharp instinct. Survive. She froze, eyes wide like she'd just seen a ghost climb out of the earth. Kenneth, what are you doing here? Now it's good to see you. Now how are you? I held up the envelope. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, panic, calculation. Gone almost instantly. You need to leave. Her tone was clipped, commanding. The same tone she used when she wanted to end conversations at holiday dinners. But I stepped inside before she could block me. She was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was finally standing at my full height. I know everything, I said quietly. That sentence hit her harder than shouting ever could. She shut the door slowly, like buying time. I don't know what that lawyer told you, but... Don't, I interrupted. My voice didn't shake. For once, it didn't shake. I walked through the entryway, eyes scanning the walls. Family photos curated like a museum. Dad smiling with Victoria. Dad holding Samantha's baby. Dad surrounded by her relatives at Thanksgiving. But there wasn't a single photo of me. Not one. I opened the hallway cabinet. The one where Dad used to stack old frames when he didn't want to hang things yet. Inside were dozens of pictures of me, from childhood to adulthood, all removed from the walls and shoved away like clutter. I turned to Victoria. He didn't erase me. You did. Her composure cracked. You abandoned him. You moved on with your perfect family and stopped caring about this one. I stared at her, stunned. You told him that? Her silence was answer enough. He was calling for you in the hospital. She snapped, voice trembling with rage. Do you know how humiliating that was for us? Everyone thought he loved you more. And there it was, the truth, with no polish this time. Not resentment, jealousy. She had spent the last years of my father's life trying to win a contest I didn't even know I was in. She tried to steady her voice. He was leaving everything to you. Everything. After everything I did for him. I swallowed hard. It wasn't about money. He wanted someone to carry his memory. Her laugh was sharp and bitter. Memories don't pay property taxes. She turned away, shoulders shaking. From anger or fear, I couldn't tell. Do you know how hard we worked to keep him comfortable? How much we spent? Samantha's business almost collapsed because we were funding hospice. We needed that money. I stared at her, incredulous. So you stole it from a dying man's son? She spun around. No, I stole from someone who didn't show up. The accusation hit like a punch. Not because it was true, but because she needed it to be. She needed to believe I abandoned him so she wouldn't have to face what she did. My voice was barely a whisper. I never got the calls. I never got the letters. Her expression fractured. Panic first, then strategy. He wanted peace. That's why he didn't reach out. I pulled out the photocopy of the sign will and slammed it onto the table. He didn't want peace. He wanted truth. For a moment, there was no sound except the hum of the refrigerator. Then I said the word she feared most. You blocked every message. You intercepted every envelope. You used my trust to finance your life, and you let him die thinking I didn't care. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the counter to stay upright. Her voice wavered. You would have taken everything from us. Us, not him. It was never about my father. Not really. Footsteps rushed down the stairs. Samantha, now in a blazer, heels clicking like gunshots on hardwood. Mom, what's going on? She saw me, then saw the paperwork on the table. Her face went white. Oh, God, she whispered. He knows. She looked at her mother, not me, and that said everything. They had done this together. Every lie, every diversion, every theft, every signed withdrawal, every block call to my father's only son. Victoria held my eyes one last time, desperate, broken, afraid. If you take this from us, we have nothing left. The past version of me, the man who stayed silent, who gave up the house and the savings and the car just to avoid conflict, almost answered with sympathy. But the man standing here now understood. I didn't take anything from them. They took everything from me. And my father, the man they isolated, manipulated, and ultimately erased, deserved better than silence. For the first time since he died, I felt him beside me, not as memory, as strength. I gathered the documents and walked toward the door. Victoria collapsed into a dining chair, sobbing. Samantha dropped to her knees, shaking her head in disbelief. Neither moved to stop me, because the truth was finally bigger than their fear, and I was done living small. I didn't go home. I didn't go back to work. I drove straight to the place where the lies began, the place where the truth needed to be seen. My father's memorial plaque stood in the lobby of the Whitford Foundation, the charity he helped build. Every year, there was a fundraising banquet in his honor. I had never been invited after he died. Now I understood why. Tonight's event was already underway. Cars lined the circle drive. Photographers waited near the entrance. Guests in gowns and tuxedos filed in beneath banners with my father's face on them, his image smiling down on a room full of people who thought they knew his legacy. I walked inside holding a folder thicker than a Bible. No one recognized me at first. I was just a man in a worn suit and scuffed shoes. But then heads turned, one by one, not because they remembered me, but because Victoria and Samantha walked in right behind me. Their timing was perfect, or poetic. Victoria froze when she saw where I was headed, the stage. She whispered urgently, "Kenneth, don't do this." I didn't stop walking. On stage, the host, a financial advisor named Charles Dietrich, was praising the family who protected Raymond Whitford's legacy with dignity. The crowd applauded as Victoria was invited up, but I stepped onto the stage before she reached the podium. The host blinked at me. "Sir, this portion of the program." I took the microphone from his hand, not roughly, just decisively. A hush rippled across the room. I looked out the sea of polished people, donors, executives, community leaders, men I once negotiated with, women who once shook my wife's hand at galas. My voice didn't tremble. "My name is Kenneth Allen Whitford. I am Raymond Whitford's son." Gasps, confusion, whispers, cameras rising. I reached into the folder and held up the will, the signed copy my father fought to finalize without interference. My father left everything to me, and he tried to tell me. For months, he called, he wrote, he sent documents, but I never received a single one. I turned toward Victoria, because she intercepted every message. Victoria stepped forward, shaking her head, plastering on a desperate smile. "He's confused, grieving. Please, everyone." I laid the bank withdrawals on the podium, each page projected on the massive screens behind me, account numbers, signatures, timestamps. The room erupted, gasps, murmurs, hands flying in mouths. I continued. The trust fund my father built for me, stolen, his assets redirected, his will suppressed, his memory used to build a life funded by fraud. Samantha shouted from the audience, "We took care of him. You abandoned him." I lifted a photograph, the last one my father ever took with me, him in a hospital bed, holding my hand, weak smile, eyes full of love. The date stamp appeared on the screen. I was there. They told everyone I wasn't. They built their narrative on that lie. Silence spread like a wave. I looked directly at Victoria. He died believing I didn't love him, because you needed that story more than he needed his son. She started sobbing, not dainty, not performative, collapsing truth. Samantha began to crumble beside her, face flushed, mascara streaking. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. My voice was steady, the tone of a verdict. You didn't destroy me because you hated me. You destroyed me because you were terrified he loved me. Someone in the audience yelled, "Is this true?" Another, "Is this criminal?" Then a voice I didn't expect broke through the turmoil, Mark Holloway, stepping forward from the crowd. "The investigation is already open," he announced. "Law enforcement will receive all documents tonight." Reporters rushed the stage. Flashbulbs detonated like fireworks. The crowd swarmed, half craving justice, half hungry for spectacle. I put the microphone down and stepped away. And the most powerful thing happened. No one stopped me. No one yelled at me. No one told me to leave. People moved out of my path, creating a corridor of space without anyone instructing them to, not out of fear, out of respect. As I walked toward the exit, I passed a massive portrait of my father hanging near the bar. I paused. He wasn't looking down at Victoria. He wasn't looking at Samantha. He wasn't looking at the donors or the crowd. He was looking at me, not literally, of course, but in that moment, it felt like recognition, felt like approval. Security, donors, and board members clustered around Victoria and Samantha, demanding answers, demanding accountability. Their empire of lies was collapsing right where they built it. I stepped outside into the night air, cold, sharp, clean. My life wasn't fixed, but something that had been stolen from me, dignity, was finally mine again. Behind me, the doors burst open as chaos continued. But no one called my name, because they all knew. I had already said everything that needed to be said. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. I drove to the lake instead, the one my father loved, the one he said held water that remembers. The moon reflected on the surface like a sheet of glass, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was trespassing in my own life. The next weeks moved like slow daylight breaking after a long storm. Investigators contacted me. Subpoenas were issued. The trust was restored. Not immediately, not dramatically, just piece by piece, document by document, the way real justice works. There were hearings. There were apologies, not from Victoria or Samantha, but from people who had once stood by their version of the truth. I didn't chase headlines. I didn't post statements. I didn't need the world to know I'd been wrong to feel whole again. There was a moment, a small one, quiet but sharp, when I walked back into corporate building where I use a mop. Michael, the young manager, saw me in the lobby. His face went tight with discomfort. "Are you here for work?" he asked. Not mocking, not smug, just unsure. I shook my head. Not anymore. He nodded, stepping aside with a kind of reverence, holding the door open for me. It didn't matter whether he'd seen the articles or heard the rumors. What mattered was that, for the first time in years, someone who once spoke down to me now looked at me eye to eye. I left without bitterness. Soon after, my father's house became legally mine. I didn't rush to move in. I spent 3 days there first in silence, going room by room, letting memories breathe again. I found his handwritten notes, his old tools, the watch he promised he'd give me when the time was right. I put it on. It fit perfectly. I didn't sell the house. I didn't renovate it into something grand. I restored the porch swing. I rehung the wind chimes. I pulled the old photos from the cabinet and lined every wall with the family history someone tried to bury. Later came something I never expected, a call from my son, David. He didn't know the whole story, not yet. He just said, "Mom told me things, and I don't think they were true." I didn't blame him for believing the wrong version of me. Silence had built that version. We met at a cafe a week later. We didn't fix everything in a single conversation. That's not how real healing works. But the distance started to shrink. Not with grand revelations, but with tiny truths shared gently. I found work again, not janitorial, not corporate. I got certified to help small businesses manage procurement and vendor systems. The first time I signed a consulting contract with my full name printed on the top line, my hands didn't shake. I wasn't rebuilding the life I lost. I was building the one no one could take away again. The house was quiet, the good kind of quiet. Morning light filtered through the windows, soft and golden, catching dust motes that drifted lazily in the air. I stood in my father's study, the room Victoria never cared for, the room he kept as a sanctuary. The wind chimes on the porch rang gently through the open window, the same sound I fell asleep to as a boy. I opened the top drawer of his desk, the one that used a stick unless you pulled it just right. Inside lay his old leather-bound journal and a velvet pouch containing the cufflinks he gave me for my 10th work anniversary. The ones I once wore to boardrooms and later packed in a box on the hardest night of my life. I held them in my palm, small, solid, weighty with memory. Without ceremony, without performance, I walked the hallway wall, where I'd rehung every family photo in chronological order. I stopped in front of the picture of my father and me on the sailboat, the summer before he remarried. I pressed the cufflinks firmly onto the wooden ledge beneath the frame and let my hand rest there. No tears, no words, just silence and belonging